The UFC has recently announced it will be returning to Lincoln, Nebraska on April the 25th, and along with that card being announced, some fights have been announced with it. So we're going to go through each and every one of them, giving a reaction and breakdown of the fights and what I think about the fights, and maybe a little bit of a prediction as well, and a little bit of a nudge, go and bet on this guy kind of prediction. But one question remains in my mind. We're going to Nebraska. Where is Kamaru Usman in the main event? That's all I'm going to say. Okay? I don't mind the main event that we've got. Believe me, the main event's a very good main event, and we're going to get to that in a second. But this was a prime opportunity here. You get to make the most of Marty Usman's Nebraskan roots. You know, he goes back aeons ago to Nebraska, before Americans even settled there as immigrants. Marty Usman's family origins have gone deeply back in the underground, in the earth of Nebraska. This was the time to have Usman actually get cheered for once. The people of Nebraska rejoicing that their hero has returned home. Jesus Christ. I know, I was looking forward to it, but I'm going to say they dropped the ball with not getting Kamaru Usman involved, because Usman versus Masvidal was the main event. God damn it. That would be a very interesting fight, but we're going to talk about the fights that have got announced, rather than rambling on about Marty Usman. Fake newsman. We'll start with this. This one hasn't been announced. This one's been announced for UFC Auckland. I fucked up the whole fucking video. Rachel Ostovich pulled out. Let's talk about that for a second. Paige Van Zandt and Rachel Ostovich, Instagram fucking influencers, need to start fighting. They keep pulling out of fights. I'm sick of it. And now we've got fucking someone from YBN in the fucking replacement. Shayna Dobson. No offense. But Jesus Christ. Anyway, moving on to the Nebraska card that I was going to talk about. Here we go. And this one's for UFC London. Maybe we're just going to do a fight reaction breakdown, because I thought this was for Nebraska. Kevin Holland versus Jack Marshman to UFC London. Let's just talk about him, and we'll get to Nebraska in a second. The whole fucking video's ruined. But that's my car crash of a fucking channel. I'll be honest with you. Let's talk about this. Kevin Holland, Jack Marshman. Great fight. Kevin Holland coming off a tough loss to Brendan Allen, I believe. Jack Marshman as well, coming off a loss to Edmund Shabazian. Those are difficult names to say back to back, but Jesus. Tough for both of them. They're both coming off losses. Let's see if they can cancel each other out at UFC London. Great fight to have on the prelims. I'll look forward to it. Moving on to this fucking card that I want to talk about, okay? The main event has been announced. Anthony Smith versus Glover Teixeira to headline UFC Lincoln, Nebraska on April the 25th. I look forward to this so much. I think that now more than ever, Anthony Smith is a little bit underrated, especially at light heavyweight. I gave him shit a little bit going into the Gustafsson fight. I didn't think he was amazing. But when you look at what Jones did to Gustafsson before what he did to Smith, Smith stacks up pretty well, and I should have known that in hindsight, you know? I wish I could go back in time and change my predictions. Anthony Smith is a beast. This is a great matchup for him. I was wondering if this was going to take place in Brazil, but then I remember that Anthony Smith said he's not taking another fight outside of the US because he just went to fucking Sweden to take on Alexander Gustafsson, which I say, fair enough, you can fight in the US. They've made this the main event. It's a great main event. You've got Glover Teixeira coming off a close win over Nikita Krylov, but a win nevertheless. Before that, I believe he beat Carl Roberson, or maybe someone else. Maybe someone else coming up from middleweight. I can't quite remember. But before that, he beat Ion Cutelaba. Glover Teixeira's on a bit of a fucking streak right now. You don't realise it with some of these older Brazilians at light heavyweight, but they're slowly killing the game. Glover Teixeira is a threat right now. Anthony Smith, I believe, is going to get this win, but this is a dangerous fight for Anthony Smith. Teixeira is a veteran of the game. I feel like Anthony Smith, with some time off and some evolving, is going to get the better of Glover Teixeira in his hometown. I look forward to it. I really look forward to it. Great fight. Anthony Smith's in a tough position right now because the Jones loss was so dominant and so careless for Jones to win a 5-round fight that he's going to have to string together at least 3 in a row. Maybe even 4 at a push, depending on how impressive those wins are. So a win over Glover Teixeira, although he's won 2 in a row after losing a title fight, it's not going to get him back in the mix. He's going to need another one after this, but I think he's going to get a big win over Glover Teixeira. Moving on to Patrick Cummins, or Zach Cummins, sorry, a different Cummins, versus Andrew Sanchez, again added to UFC Lincoln. This is a prelim bout, but again, Zach Cummins, veteran of the game, how can you hate him? You know, he's had a tough career, ups and downs all along the way. Andrew Sanchez coming off a pretty competitive loss to Marvin Vettori, I believe, in his last fight. Very good performance from Marvin Vettori, but losing to Marvin Vettori at this point, It's tough. Marvin Vettori is the next man up in that division. You know, split decision loss to Israel Adesanya. That's the only loss he's had recently. Marvin Vettori's a fucking beast, so I don't hold that against Andrew Sanchez. Zach Cummins, Andrew Sanchez. Sounds like a great fight to me. That's a prelimmer, to be honest with you, and I think that maybe Andrew Sanchez is going to get the job done. Moving on. A great fight for UFC Lincoln, Nebraska. Anthony Rocco Martin makes his return against David Sawada. Interesting matchup. I think that Tony Martin should have maybe looked for a more named opponent, but I guess he just wants to get a fight in the US, and he's not really complaining because, of course, before he went to Russia to take on Ramazan Emeev and won a decision in Russia, and I'm sure he felt like he was risking his position there with going all the way over to Russia to maybe perhaps some biased judges, who knows. Looking for a fight in the US, he's accepted the fight with David Sawada. Should be a walk in the park for Anthony Rocco Martin. I'm telling you, man. This guy so almost beat Damian Maia in that third round. If that was a 5-round fight, Anthony Rocco Martin would smoke Damian Maia. But it wasn't a 5-round fight. And I believe that Damian Maia knew that going into it. You know, like he wanted it as a 3-rounder. Because Damian Maia, if Damian Maia calls for a main event, he's got a main event. You know, that's just kind of how it works with Damian Maia. But Anthony Rocco Martin bounced back against Ramazan Emeev. I think he's going to bounce back again here against David Sawada, and I think he's actually going to get a finish. Dan Hooker. Sorry, not Dan Hooker. David Sawada looks a lot like Dan Hooker. David Zawada's tough customer, not to the level of Anthony Rocco Martin. I think Rocco Martin gets a big win. Moving on. Another fight announced. Cynthia Calvillo versus Antonina Shevchenko. Great fight to look at. Amazing fight to look at. I'm a big fan of both of these girls in many different ways. I think this is a great fight to happen. Cynthia Calvillo coming off a draw to her last opponent, which I can't fucking remember the name off the top of my head, but I know of the last opponent that she fought. The short notice girl that came in. I can't remember her fucking name, to be honest with you, but they went to a draw. Cynthia Calvillo. I keep thinking she's being hyped up sometimes, but I don't see it. You know, I don't get the hype that the UFC is funneling behind her, giving her co-main event slots back to back. Like, I don't see the skill level that the UFC sees. But I guess the UFC sees dick sucking lips and puts them as the co-main event. So who knows? Antonina Shevchenko coming off a big win as well. A very impressive performance and a very entertaining performance. That's a great fight. I'd bet money on Antonina Shevchenko. Your surname Shevchenko, you're gonna commit crimes against women. And that's just how things work. Okay? Jeffrey Epstein should change his surname, honestly. Crimes against women. The Shevchenkos have got that shit down. Moving on to the last fight announced for UFC Lincoln, Nebraska. Michael Johnson versus Evan Dunham. Michael Johnson coming off a loss to Stevie Ray at UFC Singapore, I believe. Maia versus Askren on the co-main event. Weird co-main event, I know, but they were in Singapore. It's not going to be the strongest of cards, let's be real. Taking on Evan Dunham. Evan Dunham, when did he join the UFC? Evan Dunham is one of the biggest veterans in the fucking game. I remember Evan Dunham. Wait, how do I know Evan Dunham? I remember Evan Dunham losing a razor close decision to Sean Shirk way back in the day. Let me see this fucking shit. Hang on, where's Evan Dunham? I need to look this fucking guy up. Evan Dunham. Here we go. Evan Dunham. When was that? 2011? 2010. At the end of 2010, Sean Shirk loses a split decision, but he's been in the UFC even before that. He popped onto my radar when he fought Sean Shirk and Melvin Gillard back to back. But he's been in the UFC since 2009. That is a fucking veteran of the game. He's coming off a long layoff. Michael Johnson should make quick work of him, I'll be honest with you. Because Evan Dunham's coming off a loss to fucking Francisco Trinaldo by KO, which isn't the best sign. And that was in 2018. Been off for a long time. If Michael Johnson loses this one, it's time to hang up the gloves, because clearly he's no longer in his prime and he's falling rapidly down the spiral of losing fights over and over again that he should be winning. I think Michael Johnson's going to win over Evan Dunham. Facts dictate that Michael Johnson should win this fight. Logic dictates that Michael Johnson should win this fight. But then again, logic and Michael Johnson don't quite go hand in hand, because he should have beaten Stevie Ray. I think Michael Johnson's going to win. Wouldn't be surprised if he fucking loses, because he has been yeah, I don't know. He's been rapidly decreasing in skill level, but I think it's an interesting fight to make. I really do. I'm looking forward to seeing this one go down. UFC Lincoln's looking good so far. I reckon they could do with maybe a Nebraska. Where's Nebraska on the map? Let me look at Nebraska real quick. If I can just see, I'll find something off the top of my head. If I'm looking at Lincoln, Nebraska, I'll give you some more fights that they can add to the card. Jesus Christ, the Atlantic Ocean is massive. Nebraska. Where are we? Top? Is it at the top somewhere? I'm sure it's at the top somewhere. There we go, Nebraska. That is close to Kansas, Arkansas. Okay, so they're country people in the middle. There's some middle states. Maybe we can get Bryce Mitchell on there versus Hakeem Dawodu in Nebraska. Who knows? Maybe we can get Bryce Mitchell versus a Sadiq Yusuf, a Shane Burgos. Who knows? Great fights to make. I'm looking forward to it. I really am. That's a great card. We just need to funnel some more fights on there, including a Bryce Mitchell. I think that would be key to making that fight happen. He's in the country. He's in the middle of America, the flyover states. Bryce Mitchell's definitely going to get a slot on that card, I would imagine. Great card. I'm looking forward to it. Let's get it filled up with great talent. And if I find out, because right now, Antonina Shevchenko versus Cynthia Calvillo is the co-main event. If I fucking see that as co-main event by the time fight night comes around, the UFC has failed us. Okay? I'm not interested in that one as much as I would be Evan Dunn and Michael Johnson. Okay? I'm looking forward to it. We need to stack it a little bit more. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button there. Goodbye. See you later. This was a messy video. Okay? I'm tired. These were messy fucking videos. But bear with me, alright? They're videos nevertheless. Goodbye.